Hi, everybody. This lecture will cover an introduction to Middlesex by Jeffrey Eugenides. I'm hoping that this week you can get up through the end of book 2, which I think is about, I have it marked here, page 211. I know that's a big ask for 1 week, but we sort of have to compress the quarter because we only have 10 weeks now. But this is a great book, and I hope once you start reading it, you get into it and you just want to keep reading. Finish the whole thing in one go if you want to, spread over a couple of days probably, because the book is like 500 pages long. I don't know how many pages you all can read in a day, but I can't read 500 pages in a day unless I'm reading something really easy. Anyway, read it. Read it all this week if you want to. We'll be finishing it up next week is what I was trying to communicate there. Again, I'm so sorry that we have to have this class online. I know I said that last week. This feels so weird to me. I've never taught this class online before. I'm not used to doing it this way, but we'll make do. We'll do what we can with what we've got here. So I hope last week went okay for you. It seemed like it, there weren't too many glitches. I know some of you were having trouble getting books. What I tried to do was extend the deadline for the discussion last week so that Monday of this week was the date that the discussion forum would close. I hope that helped a couple of you out. I'm hoping that you all have books now and everything is all set up. So anyway, try to get up through page 211 of this book before completing the discussion, which is due Thursday this week. I hope you can't hear my kid yelling in the background. Oh my goodness, he's screaming at his dad. He's only 5, so sometimes he has some meltdowns. He's stuck at home with mom and dad, and it's rough. Anyway, enough about my family. This week, what you need to do is listen to this lecture, obviously, and then read through the other materials in the module. I put up some extra stuff about the novel that you don't have to read if you don't want to, but I'm hoping it's helpful. I'll talk a little bit more about that stuff in a few minutes. And then also make sure you read the discussion questions, consider them, think about them a little bit, and then write your discussion posts before midnight Thursday this week. I'll try to keep consistent deadlines for those discussions. Thursday of every week, I think, is what the syllabus says. So I'm going to try to stick to that, just so that we have expectations set. And since this class typically is a 4-day-a-week class, we'll try to sort of keep with that. Anyway, I want to give you a little bit of background and context for this book. I read this book many, many years ago, right? Shortly after it first came out in 2002. I want to say I read it about, 15, 16 years ago. And I just was blown away by it. I thought it was so beautifully written. And it won a Pulitzer Prize. It made a big splash when it first came out. Everybody loved it. I certainly loved it, but my memory of it is hazy at best, so I'm reading it along with you. I'm rereading it along with you for fun, but also so that I can teach it in a way that's, competent. Anyway, this was published in 2002. It won a Pulitzer Prize. Jeffrey Eugenides is the writer of this, and he's also known for his novels The Virgin Suicides and The Marriage Plot. The Marriage Plot, I think, is a weird book that kind of has a character in it that's based on David Foster Wallace loosely. I didn't really like that one very much. The Virgin Suicides, I don't know. Everybody loved that book. I read it. I wasn't real impressed with it. I don't know why. But this book, for whatever reason, I just think it's beautifully written. It's fun to read. And it was an interesting one when I was trying to set up the syllabus for this class that just kept coming into my mind. I was thinking, what novels and books deal with gender in an interesting way, and this one just kept popping into my head, and I hope you can kind of see why as you read. So the topic of the novel is that it's about the experiences of this intersex person who's named Calliope, but then also goes by Cal. So Calliope has a genetic condition that makes it so that she is both male and female biologically, has both male and female elements. And at first, Calliope is raised as a little girl. So she's named Calliope, she's treated as a little girl, and then later, I don't want to give too many spoilers here, but she starts to realize, she comes to realize that she's male. And so then kind of starts to live as a man. and that's why you'll see Calliope sometimes referring to himself as Cal. I'm struggling with the he and she thing here, because I'm like, all right, Calliope is female at the beginning of the book, sort of, and then male the second half of the book, and so if I make a gender pronoun gaffe, please forgive me. I don't want to say they, because I don't think Calliope or Cal identifies as both male and female. I think first Calliope thinks she's female, and then later he realizes he's male, and then is sort of, aware of that, I guess, and demonstrates that to the world by living as a man. Anyway, this is a novel, not a memoir. So be aware as you're reading that this is not based on the experiences of Jeffrey Eugenides. Jeffrey Eugenides did not go through any of this personally. He's not an intersex person. He was inspired to write this by some stuff he had read, and then he did a bunch of research and he wrote it, but this isn't based on anything he's actually gone through. So realize that this is fictional, which is pretty amazing. So the genre, a couple of interesting things about the genre of this novel are that, first of all, it's a Bildungsroman, which is a coming-of-age story, in which there's a main character who's, a child or an adolescent or sort of on the precipice of becoming an adult, and then that person goes through a bunch of changes and transformations and then becomes an adult, but also, learns some cool stuff, and the point is, changes a lot. And so this novel is about the coming of age of Calliope, but also about all of the changes that Cal goes through in realizing that he's a man, basically. And a lot of other changes too, you'll see. It's interesting. Also, this novel contains a lot of allusions to Greek mythology, and part of the reason for that is that this is it's a novel that's about a Greek family, and so it seems natural that there would be references to Greek mythology in it. But also, there are some other reasons for it too, which we'll talk about in a little while. So details about the novel that might be interesting or helpful. Here's a rough chronological sketch in order of what happens in the book. And I'm just going to give you the whole plot of the book, because you'll get bits and pieces of this as you read. The plot structure is not linear. It doesn't just go from the early events to the late events or the past to the present. It sort of circles around. And I believe this is referred to in the novel as well, that Calliope is telling this story not in a linear way, but in kind of a circular, meandering way. So the rough chronological sketch I want to give you is, first of all, we get the history of this Greek-American family. I had to look up the pronunciation of this last name, and the internet keeps telling me that it's Stephanides. I kind of want it to be Stephanitis or Stephanides because of Eugenides, Jeffrey's last name. I don't know. It just feels wrong to say Stephanides, but overwhelmingly the internet is telling me that's how you say it. I don't know whether I trust this. I still kind of want to say Stephanitis. I'm getting hung up on a little detail here, but I always feel like I want to pronounce the names of characters in books correctly, even though maybe they're fictional or whatever. Anyway, we get the history of this family. Then we get the details of Calliope's birth. Calliope is born and raised as a little girl. And then through a series of events, which you'll read about, Cal discovers that he's biologically male, and then comes to live as a man, finds a girlfriend named Julie. And Julie, I think, is referred to pretty early on in the book. So this isn't a secret or anything like that. But more details about Cal and the experiences that he goes through in his journey are revealed as you continue to read. So I already mentioned this a bit, but about the plot. So this plot is not linear. It doesn't progress chronologically. It jumps back and forth between the past and the present. There are 3 basic time periods in the novel. So there's the family's history prior to Cal's birth, all this stuff about, Lefty and Desdemona, and they emigrate and blah, blah, blah. We hear all about the Stephanides family, however you say it, Stephanitis family. There's a second time period that's significant in this novel, Cal's childhood. So Calliope growing up as a girl, being raised as a girl, and then also Cal's life as an adult man. So he's in the foreign service, Is that right? I'm trying to remember. He's traveling all over the place, and then he ends up in, I think, Belgium, and he's got this girlfriend. Brussels? Anyway, details I forget. He's somewhere, not in the United States, and he's got this girlfriend. And so there are these kind of 3 time periods. There's Cal as an adult man, Calliope as a young girl, and then the family's history prior to Calliope/Cal's birth. Other tidbits, other things that, by tidbits, I guess I just mean things that I had to research a little bit that maybe you would find interesting to hear about. So this novel was criticized, I mean, rightly so, I think, for its portrayal of Calliope/Cal's intersex condition as being caused by incest. So as you read, you'll discover that Calliope's grandmothers are cousins, and then also her paternal grandparents, I think paternal grandparents, her grandparents anyway, Lefty and Desdemona, are brother and sister. And so there's this whole like interwoven web of incest in the family. And I was kind of wondering after reading that this was controversial in the book, hey, is that fair? Is it not? Like, is this the only way that a person can end up with 5-alpha reductase deficiency or not? And so what I did was I did a little digging, and I found this article, which I put up for you in the forum. In the forum? That's not what it's called. In the module for this week. And it's from the National Library of Medicine, which is linked through the National Institute of Health, the NIH website, which is reputable. I would consider it a trustworthy source. So anyway, there's this article that's about 5-alpha reductase deficiency, which Calliope in the book refers to as pseudo-hermaphrodism, although I believe it's considered offensive to refer to an intersex person as a hermaphrodite. So I wouldn't use that term. I think Calliope in the novel refers to his condition as being 5-alpha reductase pseudo-hermaphrodism. So according to this article, the gene that causes it is recessive, which means that in order for this trait to be inherited, both parents would have to have a copy of the gene. I'm not a scientist here, but I remember like 5th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade biology or whatever, and this sounds vaguely familiar. I had to do that chart with the different colors of peas. Do you guys remember that? It's called like a Punnett square. Anyway, I'm getting off topic. Both parents have to be carriers of this in order for it to be, both have to have a copy of the gene in order for it to be something that's actually inherited as like a trait. And so in theory, it could be caused by incest if like the brother and the sister each have a copy of the gene, and it wouldn't actually produce like visible or physical results unless both parents gave the gene to the child. I mean, I guess if the parents were brother and sister, maybe the likelihood of them both having the gene would be greater. But I mean, really, you could say this for any recessive trait. Like I have red hair, for instance, and I know red hair, unless I'm remembering this wrong, is also a recessive trait, which means like my mom had to have the gene for it, my dad had to have the gene for it, and then I got 2 copies of it or whatever, and I ended up with red hair. But certainly this isn't the only way that like recessive genes are passed on. I mean, my parents, as far as I know, are not brother and sister or related in any way, and I still ended up with the red hair. So I'm thinking this is kind of like, it's true in Calliope's story or Cal's story, but it certainly wouldn't be true for every intersex person or even most intersex people. I mean, any more than it would be true for people that have a trait that's caused by recessive genes. I'm sorry if I said anything that sounded unscientific or stupid there. Anyway, I hope that clears up, if you've read like flack that the novel got for this, like what the truth is. As far as I can tell, that's the truth. And so I think it's a fair criticism, but also I don't think the book says, hey, this is true for all intersex people. It's about a specific person and his or her story. It's not about like everyone. So I don't think the novel's claiming that everybody who's intersex, that their parents are brother and sister or something like that. I don't know, but I can still see where the criticism comes in, and it seems like a fair thing to bring up, that you wouldn't want this novel to perpetuate stereotypes about like every intersex person being the product of incest or something, which would be ridiculous. The second thing I had to look up, I looked up a lot of things, but a big thing I had to look up context-wise was, what is this war that's causing Lefty and Desdemona to leave their homeland, to leave Greece. They leave like Greece, and then they go to another part of Greece, which then becomes a part of Turkey. And then there's this big fire, and then they like jump on this ship and come to America. And I was like, all right, what is this, World War I, or what's, what is this war? And so I looked it up, and evidently, oh, I'm gonna cough. Let me get a sip of tea. Evidently, the war was the Greco-Turkish War. Excuse me. I don't have the corona. I just have like a weird allergy cough. Not that you can get anything from me through the computer anyway. So there's the Greco-Turkish War, which happened between 1918 and 1922. And it resulted from the partitioning of the Ottoman Empire after World War I. So there was this fight basically between what wanted to be Turkey and what was Greece, and they were fighting over some territory. And anyway, there was this big fire and the burning of Smyrna, and then Lefty and Desdemona leave. So a few study questions to consider. I can think of a million of them, but I was trying to think of a few to start you just kind of like thinking as you read. And two things that I would consider reading this book for the first time that might help you to comprehend what's going on and just think critically about the book. First of all, the use of Greek mythology in the book. So on the surface, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, it's easy to sort of just think of the Greek mythology as being woven into the tapestry of this book because the family is Greek. They have Greek heritage. But also, it seems like Eugenides is doing more with this, with these references to Greek mythology, and often the references to Greek mythology have some kind of like interesting meaning that's beyond just a surface level reference. So for instance, Tiresias is mentioned on the first page of the novel, and then again on the second page of the novel, the narrator, Calliope, Cal, invokes the muse, which is a traditional way that Greek writers began epic poems. So if you've read like the Iliad and the Odyssey, there's always this invoking of the muse at the beginning. Oh muse, sing the story of whoever, Odysseus, who's going to cross the seas and go on a big journey. Or I can tell it's been a while since I read that one. But this is the way traditionally Greek epic poetry begins. And so Eugenides begins his novel this way. Calliope, or Cal, invokes the muse. So maybe look that up and think about that a little bit more. Why and to what effect is Eugenides using these references to Greek mythology? So is there more to this reference to Tiresias? Is there more to the invoking of the muse than just like, hey, Eugenides is a Greek last name and Calliope or Cal is Greek, and so, hey, look, everything's Greek. I mean, probably there's more than just that. So why and to what effect are these references being used? And when you notice a Greek reference or a reference to Greek mythology, maybe just do a quick Google search. See if anything interesting pops up. I mean, you can drive yourself crazy looking up all the references to every figure in Greek mythology that's in this book. But if you notice something coming up again and again, or something kind of catches your eye, just check it out, look it up, see if it's something interesting. Because he does a lot with this in the book, Eugenides does. Consider the plot structure of the book that Eugenides has chosen. So why not just tell the story in chronological order? What truths about Cal's story does this plot structure, this circular kind of meandering plot structure, allow us to absorb? What might be lost if the story were simply told in a straightforward linear way? And also, interestingly, I think this is mentioned in the book itself, but this plot structure that Eugenides is using is typically referred to as a feminine plot structure, and it's contrasted with a masculine plot structure, which is linear, straightforward, and chronological. So to what extent does it matter that this is a feminine plot structure and that Cal ultimately realizes he's male? I mean, is there anything interesting going on there? Is there anything useful about that that we can kind of discuss a little bit more, since we're supposed to be thinking about gender in this class and portrayals of gender in literature? What might this reveal about the story? So those are some things to think about as you're reading this week, and I hope you enjoy this book as much as I did the first time I read it. I was, again, just really surprised at how beautifully written this was and how kind of gripping it was. I just couldn't put it down, and I couldn't stop talking about it the first time I read it. I think my friends and family were sick of me bringing it up. So Anyway, I hope this week goes well for you. Please let me know if you have questions.